A small movie telling about what ODC is all about, and I hope you will be interested in joining if you are already not a member. And also, if you are a member, I will remind you that it's time, if you not have done that already, to pay your annual fees. This is what finances what we are doing. So please stay tuned and join us in 2021 as well. As Rutika mentioned, they will be recorded and will be available for members only, probably within about a week. So welcome again to this first webinar in 2021. And we're delighted to have a webinar on experimental methods for organization design researchers. So it's one of the webinars where we try to convey some practical skills about what we want to do. And our speakers today is Daniela Laureano Martinez and Stefana Billinger. And we are very happy that you will take care of this webinar today. So welcome. And I can't say the floor, the screen is yours.
Thank you very much, and a warm welcome to everyone. Both Stefan and I have been really looking forward to this day, and we hope that we can offer you a couple of hours with some insights to take home on this very interesting topic of how can we make a better use of experiments for organizational design. So my name is Daniela Laureano Martinez. I work at ETH Zurich. I am surrounded by beautiful snow. I wish I will at a certain point turn around the camera so you can get a glimpse, because it's almost hypnotizing to look out of the window. So if I am like looking out and it seems that my image froze, it's just because I'm hypnotized by the look of it. And it's really a pleasure to share this session with you. I started my path on doing experiments, or sometimes trying to do experiments, 12 years ago, when I grew tired of surveys and trying to understand individuals' cognition through self-reported accounts. So that's when I started doing behavioral experiments, and even going all the way to do fMRI studies, trying to understand individuals' cognition and how that affects their choices when they have to do with strategy and with innovation. And now I'd like that Stefan makes a little bit of an introduction of himself. So Stefan.
Thank you very much for the introduction, Borg, but also Daniela. My name is Stefan Billinger. It's great to be here and be talking about experiments jointly with you. I've been working with experiments also for a long time. I started around the same time when Daniela started as well. I was truly intrigued to understand, well, how can we better understand organizational structures and hierarchies by using experiments? And when I started doing that, I realized quickly that there's some work out there, but not too much. So I viewed this as a great opportunity back then, and I've done some work in that area. A lot of it is work in progress. And I'm happy to share some of my thoughts on the topic and why experiments are relevant, how we can use them to understand organization design better within organizational settings. I'm based at the University of Southern Denmark in the Strategic Organization Design group, and I'm very much looking forward to the session as well, and jointly presenting it and with Daniela.
Thank you. So I want to see if you're seeing my screen now. Just a reminder where we are based. So Stefan, as he said, he's in this beautiful area of Denmark, and I'm in beautiful Zurich. And this is our plan for this afternoon. So it's been a delight to prepare this session with Stefan, and we want to cover the next 4 points. So we want to discuss briefly our goal. That's going to be like our pact for the afternoon. Then we are going to do an introduction to what are experiments and what types of experiments do we have. Then we are going to play an exercise in small groups. And finally, we want to devote enough time to a discussion with you and have enough time to go deeper into some of your questions and curiosities. After the end of today's seminar, we will stay in this same link. So for those of you who would like to expand on some topics, we are very happy to devote some more time at the end. And we will, of course, share our slides and our notes with you with some references that we have prepared. So again, for those of you who want to go deeper, we will do that. So no need to take notes. And actually, in fact, I'm going to try and take off the slides many times. What is our pack then? What are we trying to offer and what should we accomplish at the end of today's afternoon? So on the screen, you see now what is our goal. We want really at the end of this session that you walk away having at least an overview of what are experiments and what types are there and what are they good for? What are the main advantages and disadvantages of different types of experiments? That's our main goal today. And we hope that after today, you will be able to have a little bit of an intuition of when is it a good idea to run an experiment, what type of questions, what type of variables should I take into consideration, but also what are like the main mistakes that one does when designing and running experiments. So we will get back to this slide at the end of our session and check with you if we achieve that. Is there anything you would like to add, Stefan, at this point? No?
I think we're ready to go.
All right. So if we start with that, then the main question and the first question is, what are experiments? And here we can offer a definition that we like that really focuses on what lies at the core of experiments. So experiments are scientific tests that you run to check some hypotheses and check if something that you want to exert control on causes something else. So really scientific tests of some hypotheses that are carried out under carefully controlled conditions. Doesn't look so careful in the image there, but it was good enough to capture this idea that you manipulate something under carefully controlled conditions in order to discover if it has an effect on something else. So really at the core of what experiments do is they try to trace a relationship between a known cause, that is your variable, independent variable that you manipulate, and the effect of it. There is, of course, given that it's cause and effect, there is, of course, a temporal condition that you have to measure this cause before you measure the effect. You cannot do the opposite. And there is, of course, the idea that you have to have control over this one. And we will discuss how much control maybe you have in different settings, but that is really at the very core of what is an experiment. That is the definition that we have to offer. And if somebody has already questions or comments, I would just say unmute yourselves and feel free to intervene, because I can see half of you, but I cannot see 100% of you. So I see you, Fridtjof. Yeah, please go ahead.
Yeah, what I would be curious about, scientific approaches to experimentation usually kind of like take the approach that you do decontextualize, so to say, what you're studying. So you're trying to control certain variables, but that means that you miss, so to say, the interactions that might actually be very interesting. And in both medicine and in design research, so not organization design, but design research itself, there are different conceptions of experiments, especially pragmatist conceptions of experiments, where, so to say, the lab experiment is so to say, an experiment that might be interesting, but the real experiment is taking place in practice. Have you considered that?
Yes, absolutely. And we will discuss that in a second on when we will see different types of experiments. That's a super relevant point. And I think I speak for both Stefan and I when I say that we are big fans of experiments, but we also are very much aware of the limitations that they have and the complementarities that they might have with, particularly with certain methods that complement the reductionism that an experiment brings. And yeah, exactly. I think you are referring precisely to that, to these many other variables that take place in there, but not here in the lab. and that how can we bring that? So there are experiments that do that. We'll discuss that in a minute or 2 minutes, but there is also some limitations even to those, and then there comes the complementarity of other methods. Thank you.
And I think in that sense, the discussion is quite similar to the discussion in medicine, where it's one thing.
If I may interrupt here briefly, I think that's a very good discussion that we should have towards the end of the seminar. We have an exercise that also goes in that direction, and we have some examples. I think we should take that discussion after we've gone through that content.
Yeah, sorry.
No need to apologize. On the contrary, that I think at any point, anyone, it also gives us a flavor to how to customize the discussion as we advance. So please do feel free to bring in points whenever you find they are very valuable, and that also makes it more interesting for us too. So I don't see any other hands raised, but let me look at all of you. No, so I don't see anybody else. I see a lot of familiar faces. Thank you so much for joining. It's very nice to see you. So with that, maybe I can ask you a question and ask you to make a decision for us. So imagine that you are a manager and that you find through some amazing data analytics that your company has hired, that your sales managers, those that perform better, actually do not have a graduate degree. So what type of intervention would you carry on? Would you carry out or on, sorry? Which of these 3 alternatives? So we are putting that now on the poll. If you can see that, you see that now on your screens? So there's 59 of you. I guess Stefan and I and Ruchika cannot choose. 55 of you can choose. So let's see which intervention becomes more popular and why. So there's 20 people still undecided. Very good. 48 votes, 49. 2 more seconds for those of you who are still pondering or Googling the answer. Very good. So I think we can show the results. Stefan, please.
Intervention number 2 seems to win, clearly.
Yeah, intervention number 2 is winning with
so I'm
69.
going to end the polling now.
Yeah.
I'm going to share the results.
Can you see the results? Yeah. So we have 3 brave voters who went for intervention 1. So they would only hire non-graduates for sales managers from now on. We have almost 70% of the people who went for intervention 2 and a quarter of the people who would do nothing. Now, I ask those of you who went for intervention 2, why would you do so? Why would you play such an intervention? And thanks for your answers, by the way. So any brave voter, poll participant who could tell us why you chose intervention 2?
Hello, can you hear me all right?
Yes, Julia.
Hello, I went for number 2, and I also think I left a comment in the commentary box. I think of the 3, we're restricted with 3 answers here. The closest being number 2. I think there is an option within number 2 to certainly do some more tracking, certainly do some more, I'll get some more understanding. as to why, you know, one favors the other. So it's not a conclusive answer, but there's an opportunity to dig in a bit more in terms of research.
Okay, so it's an adjusted number 2. It's a 2 plus some research with it.
I think, yeah, it's not a conclusive answer, number 2, but there's an opportunity to, you know, dig more to get a story around it.
Okay, so we brought up this little poll here, this example, to elicit already at the very start of our seminar, of our webinar, the idea that indicators and interventions are 2 very different things. So what we have in the paragraph, in the vignette that we propose, is an indicator. Some sales go up, and it seems to be because, or it seems to be associated with the fact that these people don't have graduate degrees. Now, is that the cause, really? And that's the fact that we wanted to bring up here, that something that shows correlation does not necessarily imply causation. You might have a very clear effect here, right? It seems to be caused by this variable, but it can be caused by something else, right? There might be a multiplicity of reasons why those without a graduate degree sell more. Could it be because their salaries were lower in the first place, so they had to sell more to get more of a bonus? Could it be for a variety of reasons? Could it be because they were simply more motivated? Could it be for some hidden variable that we are not even able to capture? So what could be a way to actually test this is something that we will be discussing in the remainder of the seminar, really trying to understand this idea that is at the core of why we do experiments. Why are experiments really useful in these situations? And why could experiments be useful for such a manager facing such a situation? Because they focus precisely on understanding the connection between a cause and an effect. Is this level of studies really the cause of that effect that we are seeing? Or is there another variable, in this case, this little signs here, that is actually causing the effect that we are seeing? All right. So why are they useful? I think the core answer, in which Stefan and I agree, and many other scientists would agree, is that they are very useful to determine cause and effect relationships. And now we start going into some advantages and disadvantages. So as I said, I'm going to share the slides after, so you don't need to take notes on these. And we summarize the main factors that we consider advantages and disadvantages. So of course, as the main advantage is that you can incorporate the variable that you think is the cause of an effect, and you can actually manipulate that, and you can have control and eliminate other variables that you might think that they are affecting. So you really are being reductionist, but you are really exerting control on the variable that you think that has an effect. You can also study some settings that might be difficult to study or in other ways. You can manipulate things that are subtle, that are about perception, and that you couldn't ask more directly in a questionnaire, for example. You can do direct comparisons between conditions, and you can also have the possibility of running replications yourself as additional studies, or having somebody else replicate the studies. And you, of course, eliminate the temporal ordering of the variables because you control that. Now, on the other column, we have the disadvantages, and there come many criticisms, and very valid ones, about generalizability, because something that happens in the lab might not always happen outside the lab, because we don't capture many complexities, and some of those complexities might be important. And because there are many issues with the participant's behavior. The participant being observed might behave differently. The participant, just by knowing that there is an experimenter, might have some desirability effects. And also, of course, because participants might drop out, and then you might have high costs with no results in the end. So this to give you an overall view of advantages and disadvantages. So far, so good. Looking at your faces. Have I lost you already to your emails or elsewhere? Nope. Good. So now if we move on and we discuss a little bit related to the first question we had, we can also think of what are different types of experiments. So far I've made reference to lab experiments, that they are perhaps the most dominant